Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us today on this Hangouts on Air, where we're working with Kurtis Hewson from Jigsaw Learning, and he's going to be running us, those of us assembled as live audience members, and also those of us who may be watching on the YouTube link that Mark sent out. This video will be archived and saved and shared out via WolfTube and other means for future dates. So if there's something that, of course, Kurtis, demonstrates, but you need a little bit more clarity, don't worry, you'll be able to watch this at your convenience. And also, if you're out there in the wider audience and not a part of the participating audience in the sites that have been invited to be participants, there will be opportunities to ask questions via the chat, and I will moderate those and make Kurtis aware of them. And if you are a member of the audience in one of the participating sites, Kurtis will pause at different points in his presentation and provide us with the opportunity to ask questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over control of this Hangout to Kurtis, and we can get going. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Okay, so I guess that turns it over to me. Welcome, and be here today, but I don't know if I see all the faces or backs of heads. So just to let you know, I'm here broadcasting from an office space here in Edmonton, and what I want to do is give you a sense of the program, some of the features that are going to be important for you in starting with it. This is not going to be incredibly comprehensive just in regards to showing you absolutely every feature or nuance of the software, but rather give you that introductory walkthrough, and to be able to share some general features, share where some of the support and other resources that are going to be beneficial for you are. Basically just a get start, and as Greg mentioned, we'll be pausing for questions as they arise here as well. So I'm going to move into a screen share, and I want to give you an opportunity to see this program. So right now, Greg, if you could comment and tell me if you can see the actual software program right now.
We can see it, Kurtis. Is there any opportunity to magnify it even in the slightest?
How would that look?
I think better.
Once I get in here as well.
Okay.
And I'm also wondering, just one moment here.
You bet.
I think what I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to try one other. Let's try that. Any better?
Little bit. We can work with it.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm showing you here right now is the home screen that you encounter when first entering the software. And just to give you a few key features, what you note over on the left-hand side is some static portions that we are putting into the program, as far as some updates, some video overview pieces, some additional resources, and web links that really relate to the philosophical foundations of the software, some of the resources in developing the collaborative team meetings, assessments, pyramid of interventions, all of those pieces that we've talked through before. What you see on the right-hand side is the school's home screen. So what I've done is built a fictitious school, and you'll see once we get into the students what I mean by that. But you can see right now that in this school, I have grades 7 to 12. There's 4 tiers that I have developed within our pyramid, and what the home screen shows is, you can tell right now in this school there's only grade 8 students that have been entered, but it gives me an overall picture of what percentage of students are currently at each tier of intervention. There's also an area where admin users, and I'll come back to the users here in a moment, the admin users can add resources, web links, that are viewable by all, but right now I'm logged in as an admin user, so there's also an additional screen that all admin users have access to for files only seen by those with admin rights within the school. And you can see here now where it says Division Resources, the division has the opportunity to push out documents or resources that would be valuable in the process. And one to note here is the Diamond Team meeting record. That is one that's been discussed with administration, with teams, in regards to the follow-up after professional development days. That document is held there and can be added there as well, but there'll be more instruction that comes directly from Wolf Creek in relation to that. So this is what the home screen looks like when people log in. Now, only admin users are going to see our three options of student, staff, and school. Okay? Our other users will see the home, student records, team boards, meeting records, and I'll break those down in a moment, as well as the support. Every user that comes in sees who it is that is logged in at the time and has the opportunity to just see what their level is at. Now, in regards to passwords, we're working through the single sign-on that is being utilized for other programs within the district, so that a single sign-on with your Wolf Creek email and your regular password will be able to grant you access into that. And I may leave that more to Greg or Jeff to speak to here. But for the general purposes of the program, I'll start in with the support. So in the support, there's an opportunity where we're posting frequently asked questions with answers, but there's also some support resources. So today I'm going to walk us through specifically how to create a team board and how to create a collaborative team meeting record. There's screencast tutorials there as well. In the documents, I'm going to do a search of the documents. Let's search board. You can see there's a manual page for establishing team boards. It's a one-page overview, as well as in meetings. There's a manual page for team meetings. These have also been posted into the Google Drive that's available for Wolf Creek admin. And again, I'll leave that to Greg to point out where those documents are. Greg, I'm going to pause in just a few moments if you want to be able to address that. Within the support as well, there is opportunity to send questions if there's technical things that you're having difficulty with. These are directed to a divisional liaison at the Wolf Creek level to address locally. If not, then we receive any concerns that do arise. I do need to preface as we go through some of the features, and then I'm going to turn it over to Greg here for a moment. Preface to remind people that this is a pilot, that we do expect little bugs and errors to be within it. We need to be notified through the district when those are happening, and also there's going to be opportunities where you're going to see places where, wow, it would be great if it had this feature, or man, wouldn't it be nice if it could do this. We're collecting those through some different measures that we'll continue to lay out as we move forward, so that we can continue to improve this on its next reiteration in the new school year, so that we can really build a package that's robust and responsive to the needs that schools have. So with that, I'm going to pause for just a moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn it to Greg to reference where those support resources are that we can access, and then I'm going to go back to talk about, so how do we set up a team board and how do we engage in a team meeting?
So what we'll do there in terms of showing people where they can access those support resources is those directions will come out in a follow-up email, which includes the link to this particular video and things like that. So we'll take care of making sure that everybody's aware with some screenshots and instructions in an email that'll follow this Google Hangout on Air.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So to realize that I am going to walk us through, but there's also screencast breakdowns as well as documents that will further address this. So one of the things that's important to note within the program, actually I'm going to do two before we move to team boards. The first one is in regards to two different colors and two different understandings, or sets of colors or two different understandings that you're going to need as we work through, and you'll especially see those when we come to the team board. The first is the student entry levels. Now, for all students that are being exported into the program from Power School, synced in, they will be coming in at or above benchmark. This is in relation to the STAR assessments that that students have been involved in. To be able to set that benchmark level, obviously those are not identified with the sync. So one of the things that may be valuable to do, and it doesn't need to happen from the outset, but rather can happen as you work through the program, is there's going to be student entry levels that you're going to want to adjust. We know that there's going to be some students that, based on our STAR data, are at the urgent intervention level, intervention, on watch, or at or above benchmark. That really gives an entry place for conversation to start in those collaborative team meetings. We also know, and these four categories here, or these four tiers, are not reflective of the ones that you will have as part of Wolf Creek, but to understand that we are going to be able to shift students to the tier of support that they're currently involved in. There is a video or a screencast that we'll reference, as well as a one-page document that's part of that package Jeff will be sharing on where to access, on how to go about making the adjustments, particularly in regards to student entry levels. Okay, so that's important to note. The second one is staff. All staff will be coming in, with the exception of principal. The principal comes in with admin rights. Every other staff member that is culled from the Power School data comes in with teacher. Now there are three, and I'll show you these, three different levels of users within the program. The admin has the ability to add and edit basic student demographic data, the staff, and all features. They can really customize their school site to fit their school. Okay? Teachers are able to edit existing students, create and edit meeting records, to go and view all pieces within the program, but a teacher is not able to delete a student out of the system, nor are they able to generate a team board, some of the very structural pieces within the program. However, they can edit and create within it. The final designation is that of staff, and the idea that staff can go in and search through any student records or meeting records, but they're not going to have the ability to edit or change things, but that they'll be able to access what it is that we've stated in regards to students. So you're going to hear me reference those different user levels as we go through. So I'm just going to back us up. I'm going to start us then on the team boards. This is really foundational to the collaborative team meeting. Okay, so this really does take the place of the traditional trifold board that we may have seen before. The team board is where we visually display students. And you can see I have a team board built, or I can go to create a team board. When you first enter your schools, you will not have any team boards established. Admin will need to create at least one to start in those conversations. So right now I'm going to actually go in to the grade 8 board and edit it. It's the same process as if I created one. So as I edit, first thing I need is a name, and whether this is grade 8, grade 7, Division 1, Division 2, however you categorize the different teams within your school, right? You can see right here that I have a number of students that are selected onto the board. The way that I get them available, or I determine the students to be available, is I can either select their grade or their teachers. By doing that, it brings up for me the list of all students associated. So with grade 8, this has brought up for me all the grade 8 students, and I've decided that I will select them all. I want all of my grade 8s as part of this board. Okay. Once you have the students that you want on that board, and typically the grade is going to be the easiest way to get those numbers or those students in, I have 3 different visualizations that I can have, and I'm going to show you each one of these very quickly. I could have the student records visualized by name only. Okay, what that looks like is this, where I can see a card for students on my board where it's just their name. And you can see in this the color of their card is their entry level. Mel Gibson came in at an urgent intervention. Luke Skywalker is on watch. Boyd George was intervention. And Michael J. Fox here is at or above benchmark. Based on that, please note that when you first enter your program, all your students are going to be at or above benchmark. It'll become your work or your task to adjust those according to your data over time. So that's my name only. There's also the opportunity, if we back this up, to visualize it by picture only. I'm not going to spend much time with this because the picture element needs to be brought in manually. It cannot happen through a PowerSchool sync, but it basically shows the student's picture that we could eventually have as part of the program, and you can see the border is still based on their entry level. And then there's the final feature of name and picture, which shows us both. I would be advising that when you're starting out, you're typically going to have this, that you're going to have this by name only. Now, there's 4 visualizations as well. The visualization I just showed you was a traditional pyramid. There is horizontal columns that we can show. One of the notes that you'll see is, no matter what my view, it gives me a percentage of what percentage of my overall population of students on that board that are at that current tier, which can help with discussions. Okay. The other visualization that I can look at, inverted pyramid, is really just that pyramid flipped on its head. The vertical provides us columns for conversation, okay, where students are organized. So once that team board is established, I can see my students all there. That's the first starting point to where we're going to be going as far as now what do we do for a collaborative team meeting. But the board needs to be established first. Okay, so I'm coming back to, unfortunately, a picture of me, not as the other software piece. And I want to pause just in regards to any questions that people may have at this point. And Greg, if I could ask for your assistance in moderating that, is once again, please. I'm going to mute.
Absolutely. So I'll ask all of the sites to just check in with a thumbs up, indicating there are no questions, or to have the person with a question approach the webcam to ask their question. So if you have none, give us a thumbs up so we know that we can move on. Okay, so I'm seeing that from Mecca Glenn. How about back at Jeff? Thank you. How about out in Alex, or not in Alex, out in Eckville? Corey and Justin out in Eckville? Good to go? Okay, it looks like we can move on there. Kurtis, doesn't look like any questions at this time.
Great, thanks. I recognize that there is a bit of a frenetic pace to this. I also recognize that I have lived this software for many, many days and nights, and so I have a familiarity that it really only comes with time. I'll continue to try and explain, but I'm also recognizing that this is not at all conceivable that one watch of this is going to give you that software. So to know that we may be coming back. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into the program here. Zoom. There we go. Okay, so I have my board all set. Now, I'm going to now engage in a collaborative team meeting. So philosophically, what we would want to see here is one person in the program. We do not want to lose the conversation at the expense of the software. And what I mean by that is really this software is going to be a way for us to visually display and help guide some of the conversation and then record the conversation, but we don't want it to become the focus of the conversation. Therefore, if I was meeting with this particular grade 8 team that involves 6 people, we'd have one person with this open and projected to be able to share and record. So we get that group of 8 people together, and we're going to talk about our grade 8 students. We're going to head into a meeting record. Now, the meeting records, the ones that are currently there, they're organized by year, then by team board, and then organized by date. So you can see there's 4 meetings that have happened for this fictional grade 8 in the past. I can go back to edit or print these, but I don't want to do that right now. I want to create a new team meeting record. We're starting our meeting. It's 9 a.m. on Friday morning. Here we go. So we're going to create a team meeting record. First thing, we need to select our board. We're going to talk about the grade 8s, and this is happening today. We have Kurtis, Sheila, Greg, and Cheryl in the room. All of your staff that are potentially available for the conversation would be listed there, and you would just check off who is part of the conversation. And if there happens to be anyone who's not on that list, I can add them into other with a comment. Okay? And we're going to start the conversation by saying, okay, for our grade 8s, what are some celebrations that we've had? We could state that Darth and Luke seem to be getting along, and so on and so forth. We need to have that quick discussion on what are some great things that we're seeing for this group of students, individually or collectively, and giving that our conversation that celebration focus. And then if there's any general notes that would be worthwhile noting, to be able to say that grade 8 needs time next week to determine locker order. I mean, this, obviously, I'm not giving you great examples of what this would look like, but more for educational purposes here. Okay, so we get that front matter started, and now we activate this meeting. Once a meeting is active, it takes us directly to our board. We can see that there's indicating meeting record active. If we do not have that button showing up, any conversation, any notes that we do not get collected as part of that overall meeting. Really important that this piece is available for us. So now we start our conversation about students. And I'm just going to, again, give us 1 or 2 examples of what this might look like. So we check off, and you know, Cindy's doing just fine, so is Michael, so is David. These checks show up. It's almost an indication that, yeah, things are grand. But we are going to talk about Luke. So we're going to click on Luke and add some notes. Now you can see this brings me into Luke's individual record, and it may be of value. Over time, we're going to build a profile of this student Luke. You can see here I have things such as strengths and interests, learning preferences, behavioral information. This can be ongoing. It doesn't all have to be front-end loaded. But we may, in this conversation, note that one of his strengths is great intuition. We need to capitalize on that. into, maybe I should use words I can spell. Great sense. There we go. And we're going to save that change within his profile. Okay? So now I can come over to my meeting record. All of this information is automatically filled in. That we're in a collaborative team meeting. Here's all the people that we said were going to be here. If I wanted, if we said Luke and these other 2 students are having the same difficulty, I could add those other 2 students. In fact, I'm going to. I'm going to add that Gary Coleman and John Travolta are all in the same boat here as far as the description, that they are struggling to complete assignments. And I'm using very, very simplistic examples just to give you a sense more for the purpose of the software than for what the actual conversation is going to look like. So one of the things that we're going to do is, one of our actions is we're going to do a daily homework check for these people, and Greg is going to be responsible for ensuring that happens. Now, one of the features within this program is I wouldn't be able to save this unless I put in an action. We want to ensure that with every child or every student that we're talking about, there's action on our part of what we're going to do. In fact, we could add another action if we wanted for this group. As I go down, another action is weekly check-ins for students. And we're going to call upon Sheila to make that happen. Okay? Once we have that in place, we go to save. It's going to return us back to our board. And now you'll note that not only was Luke checked off, but it just checked off Gary as part of this conversation. And John Travolta, that was the other one. Now, if I wanted, I could go add further notes on those students. But I'm also going to talk for a second about, let's go to, how about John Candy? We're going to talk about John. We're going to add some notes here. Again, learning preferences. John or here I can make it real simplistic, loves learning in groups. And we're going to save that for him. And one of the things that we've said with John is we have a conversation and he's really struggling with reading the grade level texts in a number of his different courses. Okay? We've actually decided that based on our pyramid, he's no longer a Tier 1. We are going to implement some of our Tier 2 targeted interventions. So note that. You're going to see that when we come back to the board. So he's moved to Tier 2. In our actions, we're going to get him involved in our reading intervention program. And Kurtis is going to ensure that happens. That's one of our primary Tier 2 interventions. Let's get that started for John. We save, and John has now moved from Tier 1 over into our Tier 2. He's here. Okay, so we continue on. We have the rest of our conversations as we go. Now we reach the end of our meeting, and we go and click our meeting record active button. And we can return back. No, we've got one more student we need to talk about. We could return or deactivate. If we deactivate, it's going to ask us if we'd like to print a record of that. You betcha we do. And up comes our response. You can see this was grade 8 on this date. Here's the staff in attendance. Here's was our celebrations, some general notes, and then you can see for each student what it was that we saw, what were our actions, and staff responsible. We can print this off, and I'm also going to show you where it's saved here as well, but that gives us a record of that entire grade 8 conversation. So I'm going to close this and come back to Jigsaw Learning. One of the features, and I'm not going to go into this intensely, is the school is able to link a Twitter account, a school Twitter account to it, to be able to, after a meeting, again, this is a bit of a PR move to be able to say, we've just finished working together, talking about students. It's also a way, specifically for Wolf Creek, to be able to show on Fridays, here's some of the work that's happening for us. But right now, I'm going to go to no thanks. With this, I can go and adapt any part of this, edit. I could tweet it, but I'm not going to right now. No thanks. Now, I go into my meeting records for my grade 8s, and here's today's. You can see I can reactivate it if I want to go back in. I can go and edit some of that general information that we had. I can print it again, or as admin, I could delete if there was any such reason to do that. As a teacher user or a staff user, that option would not be available. Now, one of the very primary functions of this program is not only is that record stored here collectively for the grade 8 group, but if I go to my student records, and I can search here a number of ways. I can search by grade 8, and it'll show me all my grade 8s. I could search by a teacher, and I'm not sure which teachers I had this in, and it'll show me by that, or I can search by a particular name, and I can see all the Johns in my school. Maybe that's a bad example. I can see anyone named John in my school. I go into John Candy, and I can see the yellow now. He's at that tier 2 coloration. We have the learning preferences there that we saved. In fact, we're going to add one more here, that he has a great sense of humor. You can see how this can build a pretty robust student profile over time if every time I'm going in I'm noting something. Okay, I save that, but then if I go into his meeting records for this year, I can see he's been talked about at these meetings, and if I go to print this meeting that we just held, here's what's going to come up for us. Oh, it seems to be pausing here. What you're going to see that would come up is an individual record for just John Candy that says the action that we took within that, just his, so that it doesn't show us what happened for Gary Coleman, what happened for these other students. It would be just John's. Now, I can also, actually no, I want to pause at that point. To me, the primary pieces that are going to be of utmost importance for you at the school is establishing those team boards to start, and then engaging in those collaborative team meetings. I'm going to pause for questions, and then after I'm going to take just 2 minutes to show an additional functionality in regards to the student. That should take us about 5 minutes, but I want to pause at this point. And Greg, again, I'll ask for your moderation for questions regarding the team meeting aspect.
So first, before I ask for anybody else, I forgot to ask the ladies that have joined me in Rimby today, so before I ignore them again, I'm going to open up to them first. Robin, I believe, has a question here.
Right here?
Yeah, it's right there. Just put your face in front of it.
That's okay, I'll just talk from you.
Don't forget to mute there, guys, till it's your turn.
Is it our turn?
Yes.
Is this Eckville's turn, Greg?
Not yet. We're still letting Robin in Rimby have her question. So if you wouldn't mind muting there, Justin, that'd be great. Top of the screen.
So I was just wondering, Kurtis mentioned that entry levels from Power School are all going to put students at or above benchmark. Does that mean every one of our students will appear in the green column?
Right. So Robin asked, I think you mentioned that when students enter into the program, they all come in at or above benchmark. Is that correct? And then it'll be up to the teams that are having their collaborative response meetings to then place them at the appropriate tiers on whatever type of board they choose, correct?
You bet. So what this will look like is, obviously, because that's not part of Power School that we've pulled in and synced, when you have that first board established, every one of your student cards will be green, and everyone will be at a tier 1. Now, really, a school has 2 ways of going about doing this. If you wanted the excessive job of going and making all of those adjustments first, you certainly could, But I would encourage you rather that during the conversation, remembering that this is a process that we're going to build upon, that in the conversation, the first student, we may drag them from Tier 1 to Tier 4 in the first conversation, because we know that that's what it's like. Over time, that board is going to be much more representative of our students, but for the starting place, that's where they're going to come in at. Now, the great thing about this is that over time and over years, the students are just going to be where they are currently at as they move to grade levels, as they as we're addressing them in the next meeting. Like, we just continue to build that profile and level of support. Does that help to answer that question?
Yeah, she indicated that yes, it does. So thanks for that, Kurtis. I had a question come in via text, and this is from the principal of Alex Mack. And he says, can we see the student profile and have an active meeting at the same time? Can we be discussing a student during the meeting and call up their profile for reference?
Sorry, I guess that's why we mute. Yeah, absolutely. So what this looks like, and I'm just going to share that screen again. So what you would be doing is, I'm in this meeting, and someone says, you know, it's time, we need to talk about Darth. Okay, so we go into Darth, and I've got the profile sitting right there on the left-hand side. I will see all the things that we have in place for him, and now we can start to talk. Now, if we wanted, during the meeting, if somebody said, so for instance, let me back up. For Darth, you can see right now, we just go to View. If we checked him, we'd add notes, but if we wanted just to view him, we could pull up and talk. We could see what's happened in past meetings. There's an opportunity, and in fact, I was going to do this after, but I'll do it right now because it relates. I have the opportunity to add a document. Maybe we have a behavior plan that's valuable to post in here. There may be some web links. Maybe Darth has been diagnosed autistic, and we have a link here for Autistic Strategies Bank. Anything that could help to support that student, fantastic. There's also the opportunity to say, hey, today we're not having a collaborative meeting, but myself and the learning support teacher are going to talk about Darth, and so we're going to create just a meeting record about him. Our learning support team is going to talk, and we're going to add the date, who's there, and follow pretty much a similar process. But then what will happen is it'll create here something that says learning support team meeting, November 5th. And we build up this robust profile. So back to the question, yes, we can have our board and be able to say, time to talk about Darth, and we're able to view that profile for him as well. Now, there is also the opportunity where during the meeting, even though we're projecting and working off the meeting off one computer, there is the opportunity in time where it is possible to have another computer open just viewing that profile as well if we wanted the dual. But I really think you're able to do it within the program as well. I feel a little bit about like the after-hours hockey programs where we've got a question coming in via text. We have a phone call on line 1.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I'm going to ask the rest of the audience here. So, Jeff, any questions from back at Division Office? Thumbs up if no. Okay. Over to Eckville. I think there was a question at Eckville Junior Senior High.
Yeah, how you doing, Greg? This is kind of for you and Sean, I think, to a degree.
Okay.
The concern that's come up here is, how is this dissimilar from the IPPs that we're doing, and are we going to be double dipping? Because a lot of these categories that we're talking about are also on our IPPs and the APPs that we have to develop in the Power School program that the inclusion coach wants us to develop it. So are we going to be starting to kind of just be repetitious about the information that we're inputting on each one of these students, because we're going to be doing it in 2 different areas now?
So remember that I'm going to say a couple of things here. Remember that this conversation is being recorded, right? So this might be something that's better dealt with sort of in an offline type of situation, but also that the IPP, APP, and then these collaborative response model meeting records, they all serve a very specific purpose, right? And so, you know, yes, there may be some information that crosses over into or is a through line between all three of those types of, I guess, different documents or records of information around students, but they each serve a very specific function. Now, when Kurtis was, maybe I should actually be the one presenting here, when Kurtis was speaking a little bit a moment ago about having the ability to post links into the CRM software, that's where you would have the opportunity to refer to different documents that may pertain to the student, such as their APP or their IPP. You can refer to them directly inside of the software, but we wouldn't want you to, for example, be attaching those documents here. They live inside of our very specific sort of document management systems like DocuShare, etc. Now, I know that's not specifically answering your question there, Justin, but like I said, we can have that conversation offline about, you know, the specific purposes of each of those types of documents, if that makes sense. Muted. Anybody at Mecca Glen with any questions? Good. Terrace Ridge?
Yeah, we have a question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just wondering what the difference is between the activate, reactivate the meeting, or go back in and edit the meeting, and which one is preferable to use when?
Okay, great question. So I'm going to go to the screen share to answer that one again. So if I go back into my meeting that I just had, if I activate, okay, it brings me right back to the board, and I can keep adding notes to it, and it's going to bring those back in. If I go to edit that record, what I'm editing was the front matter. So editing, oh shucks, we forgot that Karine was supposed to be in with us. Or you know what, there's a couple other celebrations that got noted that we need to put in. Or at the end of the meeting, someone had another general note, you know, we need to remember that this for grade 8s. And I can save that in there as well. So that's the difference between those two pieces. Does that help to explain that?
Okay, looks like we got a thumbs up there. How about at Iron Ridge Elementary? Any questions? You're still muted there, Don. Thumbs up if you're good, or there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, my question is to Kurtis. Kurtis, it's related to the software somewhat, but realistically, in a CRM meeting in an hour, how many students would you anticipate a group or a team to get through?
Do you want that answer as in the first time or a year from now? The reason I ask is it's pretty typical that depending on the facilitation that's happening during that meeting, we might only get to 10 to 15 kids the very first time. Now I have seen and actually been a part of the meetings where over time we can easily get to 40 to 60 students within that hour by grouping, by saying, you know, we have these 6 students that are all having the same difficulties. To expect that the first time out, I think, is unrealistic. I think one of the things that we do to support our staff through this process is to say that it's evolving and that today we may not get to all the students that you really want to talk about. And that's okay, because it's just all part of that process. For the first time that you go through, if you're in that 10 to 15 student range and feeling like you didn't get very far, that's okay. That's normal. I've seen that happen often.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I'm not receiving any remotely right now. Maybe we can continue on then, Kurtis.
You know, at this point, Greg, I think that, I mean, there's going to be other subtle functionality pieces within the software, but I think it's unproductive to go into those in depth at this point. I think they can be explored. I think that we can revisit. Right now, I think the basic functionality that I've pointed to are the ones that are the most critical as part of the process. Some of the other features within the program are just going to be, at best, nice additions, and at worst, distracting at this point.
All right, well, thank you very much then, Kurtis. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to give us the walkthrough of those critical core features. And unless there are any other questions that have come to mind kind of from the participating audience, we can let Kurtis go. And what will follow from this particular hangout, again, will be a follow-up email referencing the location inside of the shared Google Drive where you can find the resource documents that Kurtis was making mention of, and also a link to be able to find this particular archived video for future use. So if you're experiencing the program for the first time when we actually are in there with credentials, etc., that if you forget something that Kurtis has made mention of today, you'll be able to go back and review this particular video at your own pace. So thank you very much for everybody who's out there in the studio audience, as you will, and everybody here in Rimbey, thanks for being here, and thanks for giving up some time today. Thank you, Kurtis, and with that, we'll be signing off. Hey.
Thank you, Kurtis. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.